as a wildlife biologist with other kinds of people in the world was one year I guess it's the Montana Tourism Association or something of that sort, was meeting up at Holland Lake in the Swan Valley, and the governor was supposed to speak, and the governor canceled, and I get this panic call from a friend of mine up in the Swan Valley. Would you come in up and fill in for the governor? I said, what for? He said, well, this tourist association people. And I said, well, they're not my kind of people. Well, he said, come talk anyhow, because I'm in a bind. And I came up and talked, and my opener was that you guys probably be throwing rotten eggs at me and everything else before this is over, because most of my life I've spent being quite offended by tourism people and outfitters who bring in slog hunters and all that sort of thing. And here I am talking to you about bears. So I'm going to say some pretty rough things about what goes on in tourism and relative to wildlife. And I really laid it out there about the impacts on wildlife and such. And the rotten eggs didn't come. There weren't even any tomatoes. And afterward, I was quite astounded, and about half the people came up and said, boy, we really enjoyed listening to you. We came here because we like all the things you're talking about, and we really don't want to be part of hurting it. We want to make a living, but, we'll move over as much as we can. We just need more and more ideas and more advice and such, and we really appreciate you talking about it. So little by little, I came to appreciate other people's points of view. And as a wildlife biologist, what do I know about marketing? Not very much, but I do know that a lot of people who are trying to make really good stuff and are suffering marketing. About half the people I would wish were here at the marketing thing today aren't here because they've sunk all their money in making a film they can't sell. They can't come to the marketing thing because they can't market their film. It's sort of a self-defeating sort of thing a lot of people get caught in. And I'm the kinds of people I identify most with. I admit I've got a bias. As a people who they're very committed. They're slugging away to make a certain kind of film. They want to do that, and they sacrifice and they scrape and skimp to make the kind of thing that they want to make. And then they get to the point of trying to market it and get caught in a bind and can't get it marketed. And or if they do, like David was talking about the other day, I think, about they getting 10 cents on the dollar and happy to get that. Well, that's not how you stay alive. So 10 cents on the dollar isn't that good a payoff. And the way I see it, anything anybody can do to share experiences in marketing. Maybe Albert knows some things that somebody else is searching for the answer. Maybe he's got it. What does work? And also, I think what I'd like people to collectively do is also help identify new markets. I think there are new markets that we could find and that we could develop. And somebody out there is going to twig onto it. They can make a buck, and we'll do that sort of marketing. But I think we can help find those markets, just like Betsy just before the break saying, everybody in wildlife schools ought to be seeing that. It should be shown by wildlife agencies to working biologists, working game wardens, working managers and such. They've got money. Betsy's quite clever at squeezing money out of people in her own agency and in other agencies. She's got some real neat ways of doing it, but maybe she'll share it with you sometime. It's a matter of technique, but also knowing what you want to do and going for it. There's some, like in Montana, it's a pretty poor state. The Reagan miracle hadn't got to Montana yet, but one of the wealthiest agencies we have in the state, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, because they get all this earmarked money, it's collected in other states. Montana gets a big share, a lot bigger share than we deserve based on our population. We get it based on our wildlife. And so we get a lot of money from a lot of other states to spend in Montana. It's a big and rich agency. And having worked for it myself, I know that they waste a lot of it here and there, like agencies and bureaucracies tend to do. there is surplus there. We were hurting in terms of the festival last year, and no time at all. Betsy came back from Helena with $8,000, which helped us considerably in getting ready for this this year's festival. But the reason I'm saying that is that those same agencies could be markets that we could look to. Some of them make their own. Some of them can't make all they need. Certainly, there could be some trading, but I think independents could look to that to a market. There's other markets. I think that for a long, long time, with the USSR, the wildlife stuff was created in Moscow and sent out to all the member republics. They didn't have to produce things. They got things. They got what they were allowed to have or what they needed from Moscow. Well, when that all broke up, Moscow kept producing, but a lot of the republics didn't have money to buy. I think now Moscow has kind of quit producing because of the dire straits they're in. So you've got, what were there, about 350 million people. There's a lot of people in the former USSR who I suspect are not getting very good programming, if any at all. How do we search out and find those markets? The U.S. government, I know, is pretty big on giving other countries money so they can buy things from U.S. companies. Maybe there's some agency out there at the State Department level or whatever that could give some money to some country where you can and sell your film there. I don't know. But let's look at those sorts of things. And I think school markets are tremendous potential. Schools, at least in Canada and the United States, the school systems get enormous budgets for school. A lot of it goes to buses, it goes to buildings, it goes to paving the sidewalk, it goes to cutting the lawn and all that. A lot of it goes to the library. Hardly any of it at the present time is going to buying good video. If the state of California, for instance, which is bigger and more powerful than most of the nations of the world, if just the state of California would buy copies of David's film or somebody's film, Albert's film, you'd probably be looking at 200, 300,000 copies. And that could make a little bit of difference in your income. BC, Alberta, Montana. There's nothing organized in Montana for buying videos. There's money that could be spent on. We need to sniff that out and help people learn how to do it. Some years back, I greatly increased the number of Peace Corps volunteers that went overseas. I found out there were only about 5 per year in wildlife. And I talked to Peace Corps about that. They said, well, it's all the requests we get. I said, well, if nobody on the other end is trained in wildlife, they don't know how to ask for wildlife volunteers. You need to go to the other end and help people learn how to ask for wildlife students to come as volunteers. 1 year it jumped up to over 100. It's just by one simple little thing. I think there are things we could do. One thing that I've been thinking about in the case of Native Americans, South America and North America. If Kerry would produce a good film for the Navajo, maybe that same film could be marketed to every single band and tribe across North America, and maybe Aborigines or Ainu or whatever elsewhere in the world. I think there are markets like that we could sniff out and find. It's just a matter of maybe we better pay a little more attention to it. Also, in terms of marketing, I think you have to recognize that people look at things different ways, and you have to build that into what you're trying to do. To the scientist, we look at a wildlife film. Does it have good scientific documentation, good biology? Does it use good graphics? Does it really explain things? The teacher might look at it that way too. The teacher might say, hey, it could be an excellent teaching aid. The wildlife trunks, which are really getting popular now, were invented here in Missoula. In a wildlife trunk, you take a whole bunch of things on wildlife, skins and bones and this and that, and put it all in the trunk along with a bunch of literature. The trunk then goes from school to school. Everything is built so that it has an exact slot to fit in. It ships well, it handles well. Something gets broke, comes back, gets fixed, goes back out. Otherwise, it just keeps going on a circuit from school to school. We could have video trunks, another market. But that's the way the teacher might look at it, and the student, building better libraries out there. We have kind of Carnegie libraries in the U.S., started by the Carnegie family way back when. Hardly a small town across the U.S. doesn't have a library called the Carnegie Library. Well, where's the Ted Turner Video Library, you know? Squeeze some of the money out of Uncle Ted and get some good video libraries out there. And it could all be called the Ted Turner Video Library. A lot of those things don't happen unless you make them happen. I think we should be looking at that from the standpoint of, hey, I got a film and I can't sell it. Well, let's see why, and let's do something about it. The urban person or the ethnic group person might look at the same film as something that's corrosion relative to their culture. Bearhead Swaney up in the Flathead Res taught me that quite some time back. He was a judge on one of our panels, and he said, well, good film for the following reasons. He said, but, I know Bearhead, so I stuck my ears up. He said, it's going to erode the culture of my kids, though. I can handle it. I've been here and there. I've been to school and all that. He said, it's fine for me, and I know what you're looking for, but it's going to hurt my kids, you know. And since then, we always do our judging of those categories of films up in the Flathead Res. Same film, maybe, people looking at it different ways. To the environmental journalist or the biologist cameraman, you're going to be looking at the good cinematography and the good opportunities and the lighting and all that sort of a thing. Have different values. The producer, the marketer, the distributor, the sponsor, they all see it different ways too. The sponsor, you know, you can sneer about it, but the sponsor might be the weak link. If I can't find a sponsor out there that wants to tie their product to your film, then you're shot down. But maybe there's somebody down the street who would be your sponsor on it. And I think you could be active in that yourself. Find somebody that would put some money in sponsoring it, then go talk to the network or the channel or whatever and say, hey, you should buy it because so-and-so will then pay the sponsor fee to you. My last sentence there, the list could go on, but the point is, we all have different views on what a wildlife film is, and what it should be, and what we should do with it, and what, you know, where to move on. There are 5.8 billion people in the world. A lot of them are not being reached. Almost all the production is directed towards what I call the 300 million educated fat cats, which is us, everybody in here, including Fernando, educated fat cat. The rest of the people are sitting out there without even a radio, an awful lot of them. When you make a film, you always target where you can get your money back, which is other educated fat cats. And maybe we should look to targeting some other audiences out there and try targeting them. You aren't going to make as much money, but you know, if there's a margin of profit on it, some of us might look to that. And I think that's one of the duties of this festival, at least, and maybe other festivals, is help people find those markets. Is why we have this workshop today. One of the biggest things, I think, is talking to people who either maybe have already discovered some answers, like Albert, or somebody who really needs some answers, like Fernando. And David, he wouldn't come up here, but I know he's thinking about the same sort of thing, and probably some of the rest of you are. And based on that, I guess I'd like to throw it open. And who wants to start first? Albert, would you kick it loose?
Well, some of this may be a bit repetitive, but I was surprised that I was on the panel here again this afternoon. But anyway, I'm willing to share whatever information I have here gleaned through 21 years of experience in distribution, partly, mostly in production. But, and there's no secrets. I'll reveal all my, I'll open up all my cards, and hopefully we can get some questions from the audience, because I really don't have the answers, but I have some experience in terms of what may help you in terms of searching out markets and distributors and distribution contracts, etc. So I'll try to be very brief and hopefully initiate some questions. I have to tell you a little story. I'm a distributor basically myself. I see some of my colleagues here. I saw Wolfgang Groth over here. Now Wolfgang has been distributing some of our product in Germany, and the first thing he said to me, he says, "I sent you some money, didn't I?" It reminded me, as many distributors often feel a little guilty when they see their producers, that they send them the last royalty. But he's one of the great guys in terms of distribution in Germany. So that just happened to come through my visits to Wildscreen, Jackson Hole, and Missoula. So one way to kind of promote your own distribution, in a sense, is to go to all the festivals. And I've got a few scars from some bad distributors, but I think the vast majority of them, if you screen them carefully, are out there to try to do a decent job for you. But I've lost out on a few contracts, so they're not distributing, of course, with me anymore. But going to festivals, you do get the chance to talk to people who are selling products and buying products and in the business, really. So that's the first thing I have to say, that we are, by default, really a distributor ourselves. So over the 20-some years, I've made contacts with people, and we have a standing agreement that when Carbon and Films finishes a film, they'd like to have a look at it. However, if you're a producer, you're going to find out that you can't do all those things. So as time goes on, you're going to have to find some distributors. But I'm going to shock you a little bit by telling that actually it's not a single distributor. We have today 8 different distributors. Why? Well, first of all, you have different markets. We have a distributor who sells, for instance, primarily for television, international market, out of Montreal, a company called Film Option. One of the reasons we like them is because the people that run that distribution company actually go to wildlife film festivals. And I think that's very critical. He or she who sells wildlife films should know something about them. And we've been burnt over the years by somebody who comes along and says, "Oh, we'll distribute for you. We want world rights." But they've got 1,000 other titles in drama, feature films, you name it. So we try to select those people who are actually specialists in selling nature films. And I was telling David at noon during lunch, I said, find somebody who really loves nature and is good at meeting people and is good at trying to promote films that deal with wildlife. We have a distributor who distributes in the French language. So we do French language versions, of course, in our country. And we feel that the people who sell those kinds of films deal with French territories, and that's a specialty. So we have Le Groupe Media out of Montreal, another company out of Montreal that specializes in French territory. And we just recently sold films that are, 10 years old into France. Le Cinq, an example. So we feel that that's important. So you have the 2 different languages, English and French, different territories, different distributors. Then we have Charles Chaplin. He likes to call him Charlie Chaplin because they all think he's Charlie Chaplin, the comedian. Charles Chaplin out of Toronto, who sells for Eastern Bloc countries. And he's actually trying to sell China. I went to China myself, tried to sell, but I failed. I've tried about 3 times, going through the embassy, meeting with the CCT people, and oh my God, the bureaucracy. But they all wanted to trade with me. See, that was a different concept. The Chinese say, the people there said, "Oh, we trade." And I said, "But I'm not for government. I don't work for government. I'm an independent." And they find it hard to understand. So I, just as a token of goodwill, I gave them mine, and they gave me one on on dancing or something like that, which I could never really use anyway because it was in Chinese, but I never got it translated. However, we never did make that sale, but I thought to myself as a distributor or as a producer, wouldn't that be wonderful to add China to your list of credentials, and in your brochure, instead of saying 55 million people see your films, you now add 1.2 billion. That's not quite true that you would, probably it's only major cities, but still 80% or whatever the percentage is in China live in the cities like Shanghai and so on, where they all have VCRs. It would be wonderful. So I failed in a lot of territories, but I've turned it over to Charlie Chaplin. He thinks he can pull it off. So that's another territory. We also have a territory or a distributor who handles territories such as in the home video. So we've got video publishing out of Vancouver. We have a distributor who goes to stores, the duty-free stores out of Toronto. We have a non-theatrical distributor out of Kelowna who handles all of Canada exclusive and non-exclusive out of Las Vegas in US. Plus Learning Corporation and the Allschultz Group, Learning Corporation out of Los Angeles with non-theatrical, which means the educational institutions, and Allschultz Group out of Chicago that handles, again, the non-theatrical. We have still others, Olympus Television out of Los Angeles, who's done very well with us, who's been primarily with American television. We have Interlingual KK Television and production company out of Los Angeles, but they have the parent company is in Tokyo. So my philosophy is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Naturally, as you produce films, you're always looking for bigger and better territories or bigger share of that money that's coming out of them. And the percentages are all different for different markets. We can talk about that if you want to specifically ask me, but the average percentage for any distributor is anywhere from 25 to 50% of the gross. Sometimes you can work it out so that it's net, less tax or whatever. So that's why we have different distributors, because there are different markets. So if you were to ask me, what's the revenue? What is the source of revenue for Carbon and Films? Where does it get its capital from in order to put back into film production? Number one is television. My old friend, who's now gone, late Bill Gunn, said, Albert, remember, keep producing programs. When I was failing and not doing too well, he said, keep it up, because remember, television has a voracious appetite. And I give that to you because it is true. With the proliferation again of the means of broadcast, cable companies, it's an enormous appetite. So that's number one, licenses. Number two is your non-theatrical market, your home video market. We sell stock footage ourselves. I was just explaining to Bob Landis. We have our own little network, too, for helping one another, you know. I don't mind promoting Bob Landis' stock material. We buy some from him, and who knows, maybe someday he'll be buying from me, too. But we pass the word around. If somebody's looking for stock footage, say, hey, call Bob. So I think we should do more of that as independents, too, independent producers, just to help one another. Somebody's looking for good bear footage, see so-and-so. Looking for good footage on ducks in the marshes, see so-and-so. Stock footage also is a highly specialized market. We've had people here at festivals, Fabulous Footage, Image Bank, I think, out of New York, and so on. But we still sell a lot ourselves, because over the years I've developed relationships with producers. Producers like CBC, producers like Discovery Network, ABC Kane, whoever, National Geographic. So we maintain that, but we also have agents. But our agents actually, like Fabulous Footage, sell mostly for commercials. I hate to say it, but sometimes you see a nice beer commercial. And in the background you might see a running stream. That may come from stock footage sold by the distributor. So those are basically our sources of revenue: television, home video, non-theatrical, stock footage, and now we're getting a little bit into CD-ROMs. Now, when I say we're getting into CD-ROMs, we're trying to produce our own CD-ROM and then market it. Now, there's a little experiment going on in our city with TELUS Communications with interactive television. It's only an experiment, but again, that's a new market. It has potential, so when you're buying rights to your stock footage, I guess sometimes you want to make sure that you have all the rights to your product for all media. I think that's basically, in a nutshell. There are different types of contracts. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't give all the territory out to one distributor. Try them out. Put caveats in them. Say, yeah, you can have it for 1 year if you generate $100,000 for me or whatever, or generate this much. If you don't, it comes back to me. A lot of the distributors are very tough-nosed, experienced, some extremely slick. You got to watch it. Make sure all your I's are dotted and you've got your contracts in place. But you as a producer, make sure that you hold the power, the lever in it. You control it. You put the money into it, then you should control it. But there are other types of deals you can make. Some distributors now are willing to put money, as the old saying, put your money where your mouth is. You know, if you say you're going to generate $500,000 in selling the next series of 13 programs, you say, so you think you're going to make that? Well, how about putting $200,000 of that cash advance into the production? That usually scares a lot of them away. But I think you have a right as a producer. If you're putting a series together for $600,000 and they want to distribute it for you, I think you have your vested interest in it. It's your neck that's on the line. Therefore, you say to them, this is what I want. If you don't want to do it, don't talk to me. I'll look for another distributor. I have lots of distributors, too, that I've had, good dealings with, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend or talk to you privately if you wish to. But I think, Chuck, I've said enough there, maybe, in terms of independent, such as Carbon and Films, little mouse-sized company from Canada. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. No, I'm sorry, I don't know of any. There probably might be, but maybe somebody else here in the audience knows about it. I don't know of any. I'm sure there's probably some literature on it.
That's probably one of the things that we ought to look to. We created quite a few years back, we had a workshop on art and the law. And we looked, at that, all the troubles you can get into if you don't, like Albert said, dot all the I's and cross all the T's. It was an extremely popular workshop. I think there's a great deal of need. I think that's another sort of a thing. We have a lot of people call the office in desperate straits. Their film is due Monday and it's Friday and they're still looking for some footage, and I get these panic calls and, always at our expense, but we gladly do it. I've got lists of people, because I get these panic calls. I can run and grab the file and say, here's the 12 people that might have some bears, or here's 3 people who might have a prairie dog and such, but it'd be a lot better to do it in a much more organized way. With some sort of a grant or something, we could crank up on that service. Somebody ought to do it. of people call the office in desperate straits. Their film is due Monday and it's Friday and they're still looking for some footage, and I get these panic calls, and always at our expense, but we gladly do it. I've got lists, people, because I get these panic calls. I can run and grab the file and say, here's the 12 people that might have some bears, or here's 3 people who might have a prairie dog and such, but it'd be a lot better to do it in a much more organized way. With some sort of a grant or something, we could crank up on that service. Somebody ought to do it. I'd also like to say, in terms of Albert, I first talked to him about this a couple of weeks ago. The reason I talked to Albert is because he's been around 18, 20 years, which tells me he knew some tricks, and I think he just demonstrated. So, he does have a good knowledge. Being around that long, you do learn some things. The other side of the coin, I think, is people who need films in a small country, or are trying to produce films in a developing country. A few years back, we had a workshop on recycled films. And the reason that came about is because 2 Danes showed up here one year, and they said, well, we've got a problem. I said, well, what's your problem? There's only 5 million Danes. I said, so? They said, well, the Danish public sees English films, and they see German films, and they see French films, and they're real good, and they want us to have the same kind of film. We don't have the money to make them. We don't have the money to buy them. And it was out of that we developed a recycling workshop concept, where there are films scattered around, produced by an agency in Montana, Wyoming, a power company in Idaho, that can be altered a bit, take out some of the things that are specific to that time and that area, put in a little bit stuff that's pertinent. Maybe not the best film in the world, but what would cost you $90,000 instead cost you $6,000. A lot of agencies and power companies, things like that, they don't really care if somebody else uses it. In fact, they're happy if somebody else uses it. So I think that's one sort of another sort of thing that we could look at. I think somebody could make a good living at. We had 2 people just came in. I was hoping they'd show up from Iceland. Same problem in Iceland. You don't even have 5 million Icelanders. Well, yeah, less than 1 million, quarter of a million. But same sort of a problem. Don't have the budgets to buy stuff. Don't have the budgets to make stuff. But still a public that wants stuff. And Fernando has the same problem. You're the only guy in Columbia trying to fill the niche, eh? So I'd like to ask Fernando to talk next about some of the problems in marketing from his standpoint.
Well, I believe that what Albert had told us as his experience of 20 years as a filmmaker and distributor, and is everything that anyone can tell about the practical thing of trying to sell your own films, no? And I believe we come here to this kind of, at least I come here to this festival and to the other festival to meet people like Albert, to meet people that have more experience than me and can teach me and can give me ideas so that I can get to make my films and to find new markets for them, no? So I believe that the only thing I can tell you is like what has been my own experiences. Probably very different than the experiences of an independent filmmaker in the United States, or in Canada, or in any other what is called developed country, no? But might be interesting because of that, because I believe that our countries need to develop a communication industry, not only on nature, not only on wildlife. They need to develop it because we have our own culture. We have our own way of looking at things, and the only way to preserve it is to communicate between us, no? And like I told you yesterday, I didn't begin as a wildlife filmmaker. I began as a feature film director of photography. and I was first a journalist. So I've been involved in different kinds of communications in the industry of communication, in different forms. And I have found that it's very difficult for the southern part of the hemisphere to develop any kind of industry, no? Especially on communications. And why is that? Because in some way, the technology that's developed in the north make it like very difficult for us, no, to not to manage the technology, but to create products that we can sell on the global market. And sometimes these products are very high tech or very expensive to make. The case wildlife films. And so we cannot make them for small audiences, as Charles was saying, no? But in any case, I believe we have to make those products. Probably my first experience or frustration as a communicator of my own culture was as a filmmaker in the feature film industry. I began as a director of photography, but then I created my own company, and we were beginning to produce our own films. There were like, in that moment, around 10 or 12 different companies working. And we were mostly being sponsored by the state in that moment. And that was the same, what happened in the same way all over Latin America. Brazil had a very big industry and was very well recognized in the world. Venezuela, Mexico, well, a much older industry than any. Argentina also, a very old industry of filmmaking. But I remember that when I was going into the industry as a producer, I began to look for the way of understanding the market. How could I raise enough money to make my film and then sell it to make the other one, no? And in that moment, probably the biggest and the most concerned industry of the Latin America, or the Spanish-speaking market, was Cuba, with a very big industry, mainly because it was an industry that was developed through the state. And they have a great impact in Latin America because they were in some way our teachers, not on ideology, but mostly on the concern of trying to develop our own culture through films, through literature, but especially they were concerned in this high-tech like film, which in some ways the way to like really have an impact on the culture, no? And so I remember that I went once to Cuba to a film festival, and I talked with one of these very high executives there, and he told me, we are not so interested in helping the producers right now. We are more interested in having some contact with the exhibitors. We are much more interested in helping them, like to buy theaters or finding the way that they can buy their own theaters and make a local distribution. Let's say, if we, the Latin American producers, you, the Cuba industry, Venezuela, Brazil, can support enough films for these distributors. Let's say we can get to own one theater in each big city in Latin America, one in Bogota, one in Caracas, one in Mexico City, and we can guarantee to them that we have enough films that could compete with the American films or with the European films, then we will have enough market. And when we have gotten the market, then we will be able to produce enough films. And in that moment, it was like a new idea for me because I was not so involved in the market. I was more a producer. But what is a sad story of this is that they were talking the same thing in Hollywood. And they were able to do it first than us. And they bought the biggest theaters all over Latin America and even in Europe. And that's why the whole industry in Latin America and great part of Europe broke down. Because we didn't have where to show our films, no? And even the state couldn't support an industry that didn't have where to show the films, because if you don't have where to show the films, there's no culture to show. There's no, it won't support anything, no? And so that's why, well, I have been like more involved now than ever in the economical side of my career, and even in the political side of my career, because I believe that someone was telling here that one good thing of wildlife filmmaking is it doesn't involve politics at all. I don't believe that. I believe that right now, not only wildlife filmmaking, but conservation involves more politics than anything else in the world, no? And I believe you have to have that in mind if you are a true communicator, no? That's why I was talking about that. For me, it's not so important to make a film about beautiful animals, no? I can make one about beautiful animals, but it has to give an important message in that moment, for the time being, for my culture, for my people, and for the other people in the world, no? That if I am a real communicator, no? But if we are talking about the market, probably I don't want to change completely the side of it. I will try to talk about my experiences, and they are based upon this sad experience that I had as a producer who got broke at the same time as the industry all over Latin America. And I had found that one important thing of being a wildlife filmmaker is that you have to have a very special talent. And this talent is the talent of having a double personality. And this, yes, this double personality is having the heart of a conservationist, of a people who love nature, and the mind of a salesperson, no? And probably this is very difficult, no? Because this, if you are were analyzed by a psychiatrist, probably it's called schizophrenia, no? You suffer from this double personality, but and that's probably why not many people have this talent, no? Because if you are in the border of having a mental sickness, but it's very difficult to survive, no? And I think a good example of this sickness is probably Charles, no? Well, I find that this is very important, no? Because in how the world is developing right now, I believe that it's so important that people with good heart, with understanding of the world, understanding of nature, understanding of the human being, keep on competing with the people that's giving the ideas to the rest of the world. You can close yourself to that and just go and live high in the mountains. You'll probably be very happy, no? I was like in one moment of my life when I went into diving, I was trying to turn into a diving instructor. It was a better idea, no? Living in an island and just waiting for the people to come, no? But, well, probably I had this need of communicating to the people many things, no? And now that I am a father, that I have a small daughter, I find it more important, no? Because I believe I have to give something to my daughter, and not only an inheritance of a camera, that's probably the only thing she will get, a very old camera, but more a better world, no? Or at least ideas for a better world. And so that's why I believe that if you can compete in this world in a very intelligent manner, it's important to do it. Even it could be very discouraging, no? And so, as I was telling you, it's very difficult to keep this double personality, but let's say, like Charles was saying, every morning I am very optimistic like him. And so I began to think all the possibilities of my products, as products, not as films, not as ideas, no? And so I begin to think about who could be interested in this product. No? So I come to the festival and I show the product to a distributor, international distributor, and he will tell me, too many talking heads. So I may think, well, I should take out talking heads maybe, no? And here comes the double personality, no? And the ethics, no? Should I take them off or not, no? But in any case, you have to at least try, no, to do it, to look for who is going to be interested in your product. And there's many possibilities, as Charles was talking about. And probably if you are in South America, in a country like mine, full of very difficult problems, no? You only hear about our big problems, not any other thing here. So you can believe that there, being a wildlife filmmaker, that's really a very strange species there, no? And when I see television, our local television, which normally shows a lot of violence in the programs bought from the American market, and then they show the news, and the local news are probably more violent than the other things. And then you go back to your computer to edit, or to your video room, and you find that you are outside of this world, no? You are making films about beautiful things and about beautiful animals and talking about conservation, and the people is killing themselves for survival, no? But in any case, I believe that it's important that there's a species like me there, no? Because the world is everything. And like Colombia is probably one of the 5 most biodiverse countries in the world. And very few people know about this, no? They know a lot about Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is not as diverse as Colombia, no? And they only know about Colombia because of the drug dealers, no? And I believe what had made me very strong there, and what had made me gain some support, or a lot of support, is that I always use all these ideas of we have to change our image to the world. We need to show the good image, which is really the most important economical. You can look at it like that, and the most important part of our country for our development, and this is biodiversity, no? And so after that, I've gained the support of scientific institutions, and like I now am not considered anymore just a television producer. I'm more considered kind of near to the scientist, no, near to a science communicator, no? And this has put me probably in a better level as to other producers, no? I'm getting a good support in that. The big difficulty that we have is we got to convince the broadcasters to put our programs in television. And our market is greatly affected by the American industry, especially. Because let's say National Geographic sells their videos for $500 an hour there, and our smallest budget program could cost like $25,000 to make it, half hour, no? A good program that will never compete in quality with National Geographic, but a good program. So how can I convince a broadcaster to open me a slot if he can buy National Geographic for $500 and my program will cost $25,000, and it will be very difficult to sell outside, no? So that's a very difficult thing to do. Last time I just went with the sponsorship of the scientific institution, no? And I tell them, I already got so much money to make 5 programs. You just have to put half of the money. And then I gave them a lot of statistics of the great international market for wildlife. And they were convinced, and they gave me the money, no? Now after 3 festivals trying to sell my films, they are not so convinced that, that it was a good idea, no? But still I believe that I can get a market, no? As Albert was saying, it's not the first festival, probably. in the one you can that you can find your market. No, you have to learn a lot. No, I was telling today too. My friend who invited me to a Indian reservation, which I told Charles it was one of my dreams, coming to meet the Native Americans and to go to an Indian reservation. She invited me today to go to the Blackfeet reservation. And I was telling her in the car today that one thing that is very important, that an independent new filmmaker should take in notice, especially in the festivals, is that the people who is right now in the top, they are people who's been working for many years, no? And people who, by his age, no? And I'm not very young, no? Probably I look younger than what I really am, but I am probably one of the young wildlife filmmakers, no? Because most of the people have been in the business for more than 40 years, no? 20 years at least. And so you cannot believe that you come to your first festival and you will get the money immediately and you will get the market. They've been trying that for 20 years. That's why they are in the top, no? So I believe if you need patience to take the shot of the animals, you need more patience to keep on the market, to keep on the business, no? You cannot discourage because you don't get the money with the first producer. You cannot get discouraged because you don't get your film distributed with the first distributor. You just have to keep on and keep up trying, no? So that's the idea that I have all time in my mind, like all the different ways of how to sell these ideas that I call now as a salesperson products, no? Because they see them like that, no? And so, like, the first thing for me is translation, no? I need to put this in the English language. And it's not as easy as it could be, no? I'm working with 3 persons more in my company, and all of them, they are bilingual. That's very important for the kind of thing I am doing. The editor and the scriptwriter, they are both bilingual and very good in English. And we have a good narrator there, but it's not the narration that they like for wildlife. So I have like a barrier just in the translation of the program, no? But I need to overcome this barrier to get to find the market. And I remember, I don't know if Albert was in widescreen, in Jackson Hole, in a panel discussion with Discovery Channel in National Geographic. I was on the other side, and they were talking about reversioning and everything, and I told them that I have one advantage on the wildlife market in my country, even that I have so much disadvantages that they were selling the programs for so little, no? But I had one advantage, that the final product in the Spanish version was very bad. Both BBC, National Geographic, Discovery were very bad. Probably Discovery now with the Latin channel is doing much better, no? Because they have learned and they are interested in this big audience. And I was telling, we are probably the one of the second or third language most speaking in the world after Chinese, no? And so it should be an important market, no? But the translation is so bad. Why? Because they consider this is not a good market. So they pay as little as they can pay for a translation. That's very good for me because they see that they don't find a public when the translation is bad, the program is bad, no? And so National Geographic cannot compete on a prime time there because it's not well narrated, no? So I noticing that, then that I have to do a very good translation for my films. They should look almost as made by an American producer, even that in any case they should have the idea and great part of our culture, but they should look in the way they are made. And also what is called the reversioning of the film. And this is something that's very difficult for me to understand, but I've been understanding it more and more, no? Like when I went and I have this incredible opportunity of making a work experience at the BBC Natural History Unit. I was there for like 6 months, about 2 years ago, and they were telling me that the Americans didn't like the English versions of wildlife films. They like a more quick cutting of the film, no, and another narration. And this was true especially in places or countries like Japan, and even in many countries in Europe. They make their own versions, no? And now that I am making a series in Colombia, like you have to learn from what you see, no? And so I made films trying in some way to copy narrative styles, no? And I didn't fit in the style that I was using. I didn't fit to my audience. They didn't like the things I were doing, and I decided to do the other way around. I was asking them, what would you like? No, we would like to see people in the films. The other side of here, no? Here, every producer is telling me, we don't want to see people, no? They will fast forward the film like that. Oh, too much people, too much people. This is an environmental film, no? The first thing that a producer told me here is, do you have talking heads? Because we have to take it off all of the talking heads without looking at the program, no? And the program the last program that I made, the one that people most like it there, is a program with the person that is kind of telling a tale, no? Very emotional tale, no? And I showed it to Adrian Cady, a British distributor, and he saw a small part of the thing, and he could understand the whole idea that this film was made for our public, because he knows a lot about distribution. He said, oh, I understand that this film is made for Spanish people, because you can see the emotion on the face of this person looking at the animal. And British don't like that. They feel that they are interrupted by emotions, no? And so you have to begin to understand all of this when you are doing a product, no? I believe in any case, if you are a good communicator, you are able to communicate great ideas. You will be able to help on the conservation message, especially if you got to sell your films. And the way to sell your films is to make products, no? And these products should be analyzed with this double personality, no? With the heart of the conservationist and with the mind of the salesperson, no? And one more thing that I want to say is that I believe that the idea of Charles of inviting me to the festival and getting to meet many other peoples, like Albert, which I have met in many other festivals, but it's good to have so many opportunities that we get to be friends and to know each other and to speak much more than we could do it in just one festival. Also meeting someone like Kerry, no, from the Navajo tribe, and especially for one person like me who comes from a small country or from a country from the south who is in some ways more closer to information, no? It's like discovering that the world is bigger than you could suppose, no? Yesterday I was with Kerry, or yesterday night we slept at the house of Blackfoot, it's called in America. Blackfeet Indian artist, an incredible person. I never imagined someone like that existed in the world, because the idea that I have of Native Americans is more what they show in the cowboy movie, no? And one more thing that I want to say is that I believe that the idea of Charles inviting me to the festival and getting to meet many other peoples like Albert, which I have met in many other festivals, but it's good to have so many opportunities that we get to be friends and to know each other and to speak much more than we could do it in just one festival. Also meeting someone like Kerry, no, from the Navajo tribe, and especially for one person like me who comes from a small country or from a country from the south who is in some ways more closer to information, no? It's like discovering that the world is bigger than you could suppose, no? Yesterday I was with Carrie, or yesterday night we slept at the house of Blackfoot, it's called in America, Blackfeet Indian artist, an incredible person. I never imagined someone like that existed in the world, because the idea that I have of Native Americans is more what they show in the cowboy movie, no? And that's why I wanted to come here. And I found that there is like another world, no? And these people, as Charles was telling, there is also a market. As there is a market in South America. There is a market only for the Indian films, no? It should be a market. It should be a way of communicating. So now that there is the email, which is a wonderful technology, it's like the way to begin to find these new markets, no? Probably we can get to sell our films through the email, communicating with all the different Indian tribes, no? And so I believe that, yes, you have to look for all the possibilities, no? Also the trading that Albert was talking on China. It could be another way of doing something in my country, probably not for Albert, but in my country. Because like right now, as I was telling you, there's not a big prime time slot for nature, no? Mostly because what they are selling there in the market is not very well translated, and they sell the most old, the very old one, no? And the broadcaster has not been interested in that. But I want to open a slot, and they like what we are doing. I told you yesterday, because it's made in Colombia, it's made by Colombians, and the quality is good. And so they are trying to open me again a slot. I have a prime time slot. This time I make a series, but this is only for 5 programs a year. But now, like, I want at least a slot for a season or 2 seasons, no? And so it would be for me very good to trade some programs with Albert, maybe, some programs with Jim, no? Some programs with other people, and I can reversion them, no? And show the public, and it will be very good because I could choose the kind of program that the people would like to see there, no? And so I believe that trading could help to some individuals, probably not to everyone, but it could help, no? And the other many possibilities that I have to imagine to sell my programs, but they can get to work, and they have get to work, because I have seen it here also, no? Like I saw that one on, it's a nice film, but some people didn't like it, about with the actor. You remember the Nasty? See Nasty? Yes, but yes, but let's say like in Colombia, I found that the principal actress, the most famous actress there, she's an incredible, almost a professional diver. And very few people know about that, no? And so before coming here, I was talking with her on the possibility of why wouldn't she make part of one of my films, no? Because she will open a great market for me just doing that. And she will spend a lot of money for doing a commercial for selling wine or for something like that. But I believe she will do it just for conservation, because in her heart, she's also a conservationist. She is a diver, no? And so there's the kind of idea that even it doesn't matter how radical you can be as a conservationist, you will have to have in mind to find a way to sell or to show your films. So I believe that's all I can say for today.
Well, that was a lot, Fernando. Congratulations. I'll start the trading. I'll trade your carry for a pickup load of Colombian coffee.
Okay.
I could have killed both of them if they wouldn't have gone here for these 2 workshops. I really wanted to. And so Carrie hauled him off to Browning. I'm glad you got to go to Browning, but if you hadn't gotten back here, I'd have been after you hide big time. So.
In fact, I was just going to add, Chuck, that I think we may have a deal going with Fernando here. That's what I was thinking of, just some nice Colombian coffee and 5 days in the rainforest or something, and we can make all kinds of deals, Fernando.
Yes,
Don't have to go to the board of directors. Sounds great. Maybe this is the beginning of some kind of exchange from one continent to the other. I'm serious, too. I think it's a noble idea.
No joke. I agree. No joke at all, especially as time goes on. A couple of comments. What Fernando was talking about, the targeting and such is another thing. One of the things in books, there's never enough children's books. There's never enough children's videos. There's markets out there for children. We got to run from one side of the ship to the other, though. If you make good film for children, you have to make sure there's a market over here, back and forth. Bob Landis, a few years back, made absolutely wonderful, two very wonderful children's films. Every school in the world should have some copies of that, and and Bob would have several $1 million in his pocket. They need it. You've got it. Somehow we got to get together, and if it's horse trading and all that. Another thing I think I want to tell you the Fred Brummer story. Fred Brummer is a photographer in Montreal. When Fred was 7, he lived in, I think, Lithuania or Estonia or somewhere up there. Anyhow, his family was in disfavor with the Russians. They lined him up against the wall, except his father, who was in Czechoslovakia, and shot them all, except for Fred. Your little blue-eyed boy, 7 years old. Nobody would shoot Fred. So there he was, all his relatives scattered on the ground. Somehow, Fred found his way to Czechoslovakia, found his father. About that time, the Russians came down the trench and to Czechoslovakia, and the end product was they shot his father. Fred ended up in Israel in a kibbutz, ended up in Ontario working in the mines when I found Fred. He wanted to be a photographer of wildlife. He wanted to be the Arctic photographer. He was church poor. But I found out that he would do all of my work as well as his when we were in the field, so I constantly hired Fred. He was such good help. In exchange, when we were in the Arctic, I'd give him his days off. He could go and photograph. And he started getting the photographs he wanted, but still there was the marketing. Well, it just so happens that Fred speaks 7 languages, and he's a good writer. So he writes a story, illustrates it with his own photos, sells it in English, sells it in French, sells it in Italian. He does his own translations, and on and on and on. He ends up selling the same product about 6, 8, 10 times by being capable of doing it all for himself, selling his own photos along with his own story in a variety of languages. So we could all learn something, I think, from Fred. How about other comments, questions? David was too shy to come up here, but he said he might have something to say.
I realized that after listening to both of my colleagues here, that I really do know a little bit about this. I kind of had to refresh my memory, though, because I consider myself not to be good at it. But, you know, it always comes back, the discussions here, and about all kinds of filmmaking, but about wildlife filmmaking especially, comes down to, you know, show me the money. Show me the money. Why? It's not because we're greedy. It's because it costs money to make films, and people got to eat hot dogs. So it always comes back around to this. And, you know, that's what we're about. It brings to mind a film instructor of mine at AFI said, you know, this isn't the film business. That's a misnomer. It's the business of film. And everybody's education sort of is flip-flopped. What we think of, we artists, when we first think of a story idea, we're thinking of story. And the minute you start talking to a buyer, they say, what's the market? And you can do one of two things. If you've got a film in the can, you better just hope that you intuitively built that in. Or if you've just got an idea, you can go back to the page, hopefully, and start thinking about market from the beginning. Or you can start from that place and say, okay, what's the market? And I don't know that that's necessarily how good films originate. I think it is definitely, in my opinion, I think that it defies creativity. And that's unfortunate, but we need to figure out a way, and this is sort of what I was talking about the other day, sort of now that we have the internet, we can speak to people worldwide in a moment. And I think we are headed this way. In fact, one of the things that I was going to suggest to Chuck is that before everyone leaves here, I would like to personally make a database, get everyone's email addresses, put them in one database, and when everybody goes home, distribute those via the internet to everyone here. We've all met a lot of people here and exchanged a lot of ideas, and in order to continue that process, which I think is extremely constructive on every level, imagine if I send you an email that's got everyone's email address, and when you want to discuss an idea, you can write your question out or write your little idea out and click anybody on this list and broadcast it. And by the next morning when you wake up, you're going to have everybody's ideas about this thing. And if you've got an idea for a film and you're not worried about getting ripped off, and I openly discuss my ideas. Maybe I'm foolish, but I believe that discussion of ideas about films is the way to get them made. And so I'm suggesting that if people have ideas and they've discussed various markets, and because some of us don't compete. Some of us are in Canada. Some of us are in the United States, and we're really not competitors. So we can openly discuss ideas and perhaps form co-productions and the like. And I'm hoping that with this internet email address database, that maybe I can help to orchestrate that a little bit. Chuck, you missed that, but I told everybody what I want to do is to create a database of everyone's email addresses here, and I'll distribute those over the internet when we get back home, and everybody will just be able to click on people's names if they want to send out messages, either to broadcast them to everyone or to pick selected people that they know, and so on and so forth. At any rate, let's get back to just plain old marketing. So I've introduced the concept of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, the idea or the marketing scheme. And that's something that I hope we can discuss. It's nothing that I know the answer to. I know that we have Adrian here from the Turner Original Pictures, Turner Productions, and Is Gaynell here still? Oh, that's a real pity, because Gaynell was here from Discovery, and I thought that we could maybe have a really, I've got some terrific questions that I think might really answer a lot of people's questions. Let me just do, before I do that, then, since we've only got you, Adrian, I'm going to put you on the hot spot. But let me just say one really quick thing, and that's about budgets. A lot of people sort of run around and they don't know what to ask for their work. They don't know when somebody says to them, "What's your budget?" You know, they "Oh, well, I'll tell you tomorrow," and they go home and they like start putting down lists of everything they can think of. Well, as wildlife filmmakers know, you can guess that a gray whale is going to come by your boat close enough to get the shot you need in 5 days. So you're going to say, okay, 5 days, you're going to put everybody down on your budget for 5 days, and well, what if that whale comes on the 6th day? There goes the budget. So there's an easy way to figure this stuff out without racking your brains. And I don't know if I'm the only one who does it, but I just thought maybe I could help a lot of people with this particular aspect of things. If you're going to make a 1-hour film or a half-an-hour film out of stock footage, a compilation film, and you're going to acquire stock footage in the marketplace, there's a range of wildlife footage that professionals pay. I would be willing to bet that Adrian would tell me that, Adrian, if I told you that the range that I receive for my work is low end $20 a second, this is a second, mind you, and high end $35 a second, wouldn't you say that that's a pretty good range off the top of your head for what people pay these days?
You're talking stock photography and natural history images?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair enough.
So if we have between $20 and $35 a running second, all you got to do is extrapolate. Multiply it out times the number of seconds in a half an hour or an hour, and you can pretty much get a realistic budget of what a film would cost them to make, the buyers to make, if they went out to make a compilation film. So now you've got a starting point. Now if you're a wildlife filmmaker and you have relationships with people, you probably can get them to lower that price a little bit, because you can sort of maybe buy it wholesale, because we're filmmakers. We're not the end consumer, so we might be able to nicely get our friends to give it to us a little less expensively. Therein lies some profit margin for us as the filmmakers. But if you base the budget strictly on this stock footage concept, it's a great way of, you can, if somebody on the buyer's end asks you what the budget is, and for some reason you really haven't come up with this one, and if you're doing a film that is sort of narrow, it's not, if you were doing something that was extreme, very extreme, and it was going to be a film that might cost double what a normal film costs, okay, then you'd have to adjust from there. But there are normal films, there are films that can be made on a lower budget, and then there are these other films. And I'm just suggesting that that's a really good way. You can say, hold on one second, let me go get the budget out of my file, and put the phone on hold real quick, get your calculator, and you could figure it out in 30 seconds, and you can come back to them and say, what do you think about this range? And give them that range, $20 to $35. And now you've got something to talk about. But a lot of filmmakers, I find, what they do is they say, oh, I'll give it to you in a week. They go run around, scraping around, trying to think of everything they can for the budget. They print it out, send it in, and never get any feedback about the budget. It's either unrealistically low or unrealistically high, and we don't really hear much about that. But if you give them a range over the phone when you're first pitching your idea, hey, you've got something that you can talk about now with this person, and they know where you're coming from, what kind of film you're thinking about, and so on and so forth. It's a really good place to begin. Would you agree with that, Adrian? Do you like that theory?
I've never thought of budgeting that way. But yeah, I think it helps to have a realistic budget in mind. That would probably be a fair way to estimate, but there's also budgeting software out there that will tell you a line item budget exactly, so that you're not trying to make your list. You've got your list right there. And I might advise that too, so that you're really thinking about every single thing and putting in real costs. But yeah, just to have an off the cuff.
Well, I don't
figure
think
is good.
the budgeting software I believe you're talking about is filmmaking. It's not wildlife
Well, that's
filmmaking,
true.
if I'm
It's not
correct.
wildlife specific, but
See, that's now if somebody wanted to do a wildlife-specific budget program, now that would be a real trick. See, the problem is that wildlife filmmakers contend with the weather and contend with animals who aren't in a union, so they
Right.
don't respond to the call when we say, hey, be there, we've got the crew here and we're ready to shoot. They don't come.
no,
So
contingency is
so
important.
we have these very, very difficult budgetary things that that we all have to contend with, and we know that. But when you try and how can you write that into a budget? We can put a contingency in a budget and try and write a little line in there about what that contingency is for. And this is another thing that I suggest people when you make a budget is have a contingency in there and fully explain what that contingency is about. If you expect to have difficulty finding a rare animal in your hunt, my God, you might as well write that out specifically by the contingency, and they can address that. The buyers will address that and say, well, this may exist in stock footage, or they may say, if you go out for 3 days and you don't see that animal, well, then we're going to suggest you tailor the film around that issue, and maybe you can have a line of dialogue in there and save yourself a lot of money. But that's something that I would also suggest in the budgeting area. One real quick thing about the internet, stock footage on the internet is the place to go right now. I mean, it's just unbelievable the kinds of things that you can find on the internet are incredible, and so we should all be on the internet as well. People are looking for what everyone here has today. Right now, there is a film being made where somebody is dying to have what we have, what everybody here has a picture of, and they just don't know about it. And if we work on this internet connection through here, we can help. I know that in a very short period of time, this is just going to be very commonplace. I'm just hoping to sort of get this along a little bit quicker, and I hope that we can all do that. Now, that's basically it. Except I want to put Adrian a little bit on the spot to tell us some very real things that I would like to know. Let's if we could switch hats for a moment here and pretend that you are the filmmaker. And there are a couple of scenarios that I have here. One is you've got a concept for a film. The other is you've got a partially completed film. And the third is you've got a finished film. And you're a filmmaker, but you've also now, you know what you know. Okay, let's pretend that for a moment. You know the same thing, all the stuff that you know now. What are you going to do? What are you, in each one of those scenarios, what steps would you take as a filmmaker to maximize your potential to get the film made, to get it on television, and maybe to make a tidy profit so that you could go on and make another film?
Okay, that's a fair question. Well, I'll start out with the concept, and actually this is something I answered this morning. If I did have a concept in mind, everybody can have an idea. I would go out and research. If I had the money, I would do a scout, get as much of it as I could on tape. We're all visual people. I think you need to see the product to be able to sell it. Would tailor it to whoever I was selling it to. It's unbelievable how people try to sell to you and they have no idea what your market is. I would really research if it's Turner, if it's Discovery Channel, whoever it is, I would find out as much as I could about their network, about their audience, to tailor that pitch specific to them, and would just make them the best presentation I could. If they didn't bite at that point, I'd move on to the next, but that's kind of what I would do there, approaching it. In the event that you didn't, or you have kind of already started, you're out the gate, you've got a partially completed project, well then you've already got something to show. From there, again, just presenting it to the networks, that offers, or the cable industry offers them a good opportunity to still tailor it and make it their project. Maybe they have a strand and it's host-driven. At that point, they can still insert their host, make it look like they were there through the whole project, and come up with something that they're happy with, whether it's a co-production and I say, well, I've got $100,000 into this, they put in another, 100, 200,000 and keep an equity position myself or sell out. If I had a finished product, I think from there I would probably look for licensing through first domestically, since I think domestically, but also look for an international distributor that could go out and do the work for me, because as a producer I don't want to have to go make individual sales to England, to Belgium, to Latin America. So I would just look for the best person to go out and represent my product and try to get it in as many markets as I could.
Okay, can we be a little bit more specific? Okay, you're the filmmaker again, but you know what happens at Turner. You know the various departments at Turner. You know who answers the phone. You know who gets the next call. Could you take us through the process that you would go through if you were a filmmaker and you had a concept, a partially completed film, and a completed film, from the very basic? Because I think a lot of people get a little overwhelmed. They hear all this stuff about markets and this, that, and the other, but what it really comes down to is, who am I going to be talking to? What am I going to be talking to this person about? What do they know? Who am I going to have to talk to in the company after I talk to that person? And can you maybe tell us a little bit about how that happens at Turner?
I could if people are interested. You know, 2-hour weekly than we do in our hour a month strand. So I might make a recommendation to them that they take a look at it. If it's a partially completed film, I see a way that it could be tailored into our genre and it's of interest. Or if it's a concept that I think could work for us. Either way, if there's some interest in the project, I mean, initially I would read everything, watch whatever tape there is. Although, half the time you get the cover letter, you see it's just not going to work. We get a fair amount of materials in. But I do try to, look at everything, give it a fair judgment. If I think that it's worth taking to the next step, that's what I would do. And in this case, there's only a couple of us that work in natural history. It's me and my boss who executive produces our series. So I would share it with him. If we both like it, then the next step is going to go back to the filmmaker. Was there a budget attached? If not, we need to see a budget, a production schedule, if there's any talent, whether it's key production personnel or on-air talent. Just, really get the whole scope of it, make sure we're working with all the information, and then see, does it still work for us creatively and financially.